think we all have that drawer, right? Or two in the kitchen. Has all that miscellaneous black hole that, oh, wow, here's my car keys.
When we are in the future, we get very anxious, right? And that's where some of this compulsion can come into play, and the clutter starts to build up because we're acquiring. So it's a trigger. And when we're in the past, we can get depressed. And this is where some of the messiness comes in because we don't have the energy to clean up and put away.
Messy, messy, messy. You guys, if you've ever felt that way and life is so chaotic, not even your hair is simple anymore, this is the show for you. Hi, I'm Siobhan Shaw, and you have reached Real Talk, where we get real to heal. And tonight I am so excited to introduce you to a friend of mine, known her since the Broke Wives Club days and the Attitude Shift show days. Patricia Diesel is in the house, and she's going to help us simplify our house, our minds, and our entire life, I think. And maybe we can do it in an hour. Maybe life will be completely perfect by the end of this hour.
I actually just celebrated 20 years of Keep It Simple Now. And we had a great time. But it really blows my mind, because when I think about simplicity, right? It still hasn't changed. People crave it. They want it. They want a simpler time of life. There's a lot of chaos in the world, right? There's absolutely a lot of chaos in the world. And right now, I think what it really takes for people to find simplicity is courage. And the courage to be able to say, that I feel all cluttered up. And, simplicity is something that's going to help me. And that's where I step in, is really helping people to find the courage to, unpack, peel away some of those layers and then really get real. So this is the topic for tonight is really just that, how do you really have those real conversations about feeling cluttered up? Because I think a lot of times people think clutter is just about your physical space, and it's not. It encompasses your mind, your heart, and your living space. Does that make sense?
It does. So how did you get started? What was it? Was there one thing in your life where you went, that's enough? That is enough clutter around. Or were you perfect, born out of the womb?
Yeah, I don't think so. So the interesting thing about this is that when I was very young, I was shown by my parents what order is. And what I mean by that is, they disciplined us with showing us what routines look like, household chores, and they instilled that, very deeply into our lives. And so where I kind of fell in the spectrum of siblings, I think that I, encompassed a lot of responsibility at a very young age for those chores. And so I learned later on in life that that really wasn't a curse, because as a kid, who wants to do chores, right? You want to just go out and play and do your thing, but that wasn't, allowed until everything was done. And so when I got older, I realized that it's not about being perfect. It's not about always having things just right. It's a fine balance. But I also learned that that skill set they taught me was really a gift. And that gift I was able to, transition into a business. And so really that's how Keep It Simple Now was born.
Maybe I'll just ask Gabriela, is there one section of your house that you think needs a little work?
We try to put things in order, right? Like in the pantry, let's say. spices section, cereal section, pan section. And if things are not put back, and if it goes on for a month, then it's a clutter, right? It's just chaos. So obviously, our kids are grown, but we still have to teach them. And same with everything, right? If you don't have the mentality, or even have your kids say, okay, if you take a tool out of the tool chest, put it back, because then it ends up on the counter, or ends up in that black hole of a drawer. I think we all have that drawer, right? Or two in the kitchen. Has all that miscellaneous black hole that, oh wow, here's my car keys. So yeah, I believe that you do have to have order in the house.
What happens is when you don't have place for things in your home, right? Like everything needs a home, everything needs to be placed somewhere that you can remember, right? And so that's really creating a system in your home. When we lack systems, then our brain is going to not recognize that we have a system. And so you start to get very foggy, haphazardly, dropping things, and just think about how many times you run around probably looking for your phone, right? So, or your keys, like you said. So it's really about figuring out if the one golden rule is, everything needs a home. And that can be from, like you said, your keys to your phone when you enter the house, your mail, just like when you go food shopping, where do you put your stuff? Do you just empty it and throw it all over the countertops and just, stuff it wherever? No, that certain things go into the bins in the refrigerator, certain things go into cupboards, certain things go into the bread drawer or whatever, right? So if you can kind of think in that mentality that everything needs to follow a chain of command, then the brain actually takes over, believe it or not. The brain is fascinating because that's why, it's funny, like Siobhan and I were talking about 20 years ago, this is obviously how I started. I don't go into people's homes now. I haven't done that in a very long time. What I do is I'm a clutter coach, a simplicity coach. So I really help people unravel the mystery of why they keep losing things, why they're so cluttered up, why they feel out of control, because you really have to get to the root cause. So you made an excellent point, Gabrielle, which is, if I'm losing things and I'm feeling overwhelmed and I'm stressed out, then you have to train your brain. And that's a very easy thing to do, believe it or not. A lot of people think it's very difficult, but it's not. What you really have to think about is the investment that you're willing to do for that, and weigh out the options. If you're willing to invest the time to retrain yourself, it's only a little bit of time versus you're constantly in turmoil. You're constantly in chaos. Think of the stress you're putting on your body, on your mind, and the time you're wasting. So my job is really to educate people on the difference so they can see the value in that investment of themselves.
I'm a guilty person of moving the stack from one corner to the other corner because I get interrupted constantly. And it's like a whole new stack comes to the door and, everybody shoves their don't wants on my corner. So it's like, okay, so you create a spot for all, not only your own stuff you're collecting or you're dealing with, and then you got to deal with, I got a big family, so I have a lot of stuff that comes at me all the time. And whether it be like a notice I got from the city or a bill that my husband wants me to go call about, that's going to probably take me about an hour to deal with. It's, how do we balance all this out? I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces that, yeah, it would be great in a wonderful world. Everything has a spot and a spot for everything, but there's so much coming at you. How do you decide what comes at you and not? And I get overwhelmed. That's my bottom line.
Yeah, no. And it makes perfect sense because listen, we're bombarded, right? And you almost feel like you're a human target because it just doesn't stop, and I totally get it. But this is why when I talk about order, right? What I simply mean is that, again, think of order with a routine, order with the system, but healthy routines, just like you were talking earlier, ladies, about health and well-being. That's what this is all about. Organization is not about this aesthetics of, everything's in its place and all that. Yes, that's the cherry on the top. Organization is really about a lifestyle that's conducive to healthy living, especially when you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed so much, right? And so one of the things that I can offer you, Sonia, would be another golden rule, which is dedicate 20 minutes a day to a task. Simply being, again, if you can create this routine for yourself, a habit, right? That habit then becomes a behavior. And so when it starts to become a behavior, it no longer is really, thought-provoking. It just starts to become natural. So if you dedicate 20 minutes after the havoc is done, and everything starts coming at you, you just say, all right, you know what? I know I have my 20 minutes. And I'm going to use that 20 minutes to clean up or put things away or go through the mail or make phone calls. You know what I mean? Whatever it is. To me, and my clients know this, I use my golden 20-minute rule every morning. And that 20-minute rule is for me. That's how I de-stress. So after I make a cup of tea or coffee or smoothie, whatever it is, I sit for 20 minutes. And that's no interruption time for Patty, right? And that really helps, clear me out and prepare me for the day. So that doesn't mean I can't use my 20 minutes again to a task or something later, but it's still the 20-minute rule. And that just becomes a no-brainer for me. It's just beyond the habit. It's now a behavior that is ingrained heavily. So I think you should try it. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. 20 minutes a day.
Yeah, that's 20 minutes. So just 20 minutes. Because, I've done a lot of these apps that they come out with for behaviors, like to check it off. And, it's really great when you begin, but then it stops, right? It's like, okay, I ain't got time for this.
Yeah, but there is a simpler way because it brings up another point, which a lot of people like your typical, believe it or not, you would be a typical client because we're getting one thing checked off, right? And then something else comes up for you, which is, well, what if, a but all these things that you're still telling yourself, which is, I hear kind of like a limiting belief keep popping up. We have to remember, this is 20 years now. I hear the same story, it's just different, right? So one of the things that comes up for me immediately is priorities. You have to set up priorities for yourself. And then that also goes hand in hand with boundaries. And so people think that they have good priorities and they've set good boundaries, but the reality is they really don't. And they don't really understand the value behind them because your boundaries and your priorities are set with your value system. And that value system is within thyself. And so my job is to help you understand, well, let's really, clear that all out. What are your value systems? If you're constantly overwhelmed and you're in chaos and you're saying that things are coming at you 1,000 times, which they are, we're not denying that. But when are you going to put up your shield? When are you going to say no? Right? And so that's what this training is all about, which is, i.e., coaching in a sense it's kind of like, in a sense, also behavior modification, training yourself to say no, to understand where is the priority, what's important, what's urgent, what's not so important, what do I not even want, and I can let it go. And this all adds up to clutter, right? Clutter of the mind, clutter of the heart, which, by the way, and my clients know this as well, I've said it for 20 years, and Siobhan, I'm sure you've heard me say it. No one's ever going to change my mind about this because I've seen it over and over. So for me, it's factual. Your clutter, your physical clutter, is just an outward manifestation of what is going on for you in your mind and your heart, period. Okay, so emotionally and mentally, you are going to see your byproduct, right? And so that, to me, don't be afraid of that. A lot of people get nervous and they get afraid. No, welcome that, embrace that, because that's your clue, right? That's your sign to say, thank you. What's going on for me? Which ties back into what I said originally when we first opened up is there's chaos all over the world. And people are craving simplicity now, but it takes courage to embrace that and say, okay, I'm going to finally look at myself. I'm going to see what's going on in my world, in my inner world that I can control and handle that.
I totally agree with what you're saying. It's true. It's probably the stuff that's going on inside that you can't process. There's so many things to process, right? And it's
That's
like
right.
I get so overwhelmed with some of the stuff that I have that I don't even know where to begin sometimes. So I go to what's most comforting, right? I'll go
Mhm.
do something that I enjoy and not even do the things I should do.
And you make a really good point too, because how we process our emotions is by asking ourselves some really good questions. Does this even make me happy? Right? Is this something I even want in my life? Whether we're talking about people or things or situations or what have you, right? It's really about asking those important questions and getting back to, clutter, whether it's clutter of the mind, heart, or the physical manifestation. It's really a matter of how we're processing these emotions. And some of the things that we can do, like a really good tip, and I really, really believe in this. I'm a big journaler. And the reason why I do that is because it helps you process those emotions. There's something, and think of it, here's my pen, right? So there's power behind this pen to the paper. If you're always on an app, you're always on your computer, that's very different. The brain operates differently when you have a pen in your hand and you bring it to the paper. Okay, we know that. And then when you get out your feelings, your emotions, so you're not burying them, and you get them out on paper, you help the brain process. So you kind of filter out the clutter. Think of clutter in your brain like, like you're emptying your computer, right? Like when you get rid of the trash overload of emails or what have you. It's the same thing with your brain. This is all true, okay? And so this is just one way to, filter out the stuff, because again, think of all the information that you're processing all day long. The news, social media, meetings, us, right? Everything all day long. And so if you just write out your feelings and you absorb them, don't deny them, don't suppress them, and, that's just for you, right? And if you don't want a journal and you just want to put it on a piece of paper, rip it up, tear it up, burn it, whatever you want to do, that's fine. But I'm telling you, there is power behind that paper and pen for sure.
I remember organizing my closet, and I pulled out something like 20 pairs of black pants. Different look, different texture, different sizes, different, uses of, like the styles and the need of the black pants, including leggings. And I was just stunned about, at how many pants I actually had, all black. I had colors, but I had all these black pants. Yeah. How many days did I actually wear those pants? Which ones did I wear all the time? I had to, I think that was the start of my realization that I was overloading my life. I was doing it to myself because I wasn't putting up those boundaries and saying, oh no, Siobhan, you can't go buy another pair of pants without giving something away. Stop, right? And so I got into the habit, and sometimes I'm sad because I give things away that I'm like, oh, I could be wearing that suit right now because I lost 30 pounds on Dr. Ronnie's detox for longevity and I don't have that suit, but I'll get over it because I can go buy a new suit. But the thing is I got down to like 6 pairs of black pants, from leggings to dress pants to suit pants to jeans, anything black. So I had only one that was going to be suitable for whatever was going on. I might have had 2 leggings or something like that. And that was the beginning of my journey. And I think everybody has to find the beginning of their journey when they realize that, oh man, I'm hoarding, I'm overloaded, I'm overwhelmed. And I get to the point, even now, I get overwhelmed And then I have to step back and say, you know what? I said yes to too many things. I can't help everybody. I want to help
No,
everybody, but I can't help everybody.
that goes into so many stories just in itself, right? Because for someone acquiring 30, 40, 20, whatever black pants could be a story about I'm lonely, I'm overwhelmed, I need a fix, I need to go and buy. This is how I feel good about myself when I buy things, right? So that starts to turn into like a compulsion, right? And for some people, that could be the onset, the beginning of hoarding. Now, hoarding is a whole different topic, right? And we know that hoarding is a mental disorder and that it's triggered by many, many aspects of one's person and their personal life and so forth, their history. However, what I would say, not to get into the hoarding aspect right now, but your 20 pants or black pants for anybody is just another clue, right? What's going on for me that I have all these pants? And if you're at a place, which you were, where you said, I don't really need these, and I'm going to take this as a clue for myself, then one of the tips is like, if you bring one in, one goes out. For something that comes in, something's got to be released, right? That's the rule that you set up for yourself. It keeps coming back to these golden rules and these boundaries that we put for ourselves, right? And then the other thing is embrace what it's teaching you. It's a lesson there, right? Because why were you feeling maybe isolated, lonely, out of control, and yeah, maybe your weight was fluctuating, but that still doesn't make sense why somebody would have, so much at one given time without releasing, which also goes back into a little history. And I talk about this in my new book, COVID, right? When we all went through that time where there was a lot of isolation, hoarding went totally on the rise. And now there's a byproduct that we're dealing with people because they have all these things, all this stuff. Back then it was just like we were all, and it wasn't really hoarding. Okay. What it was is we were buying things out of fear because we were afraid we wouldn't be able to get enough toilet paper, right? For instance, or we wouldn't have enough food. Okay. And so this was basic necessities out of fear. Hoarding is quite different, but it kind of mimics a lot of these telltale signs that people are afraid that they might have. But if you're starting to compulsively purchase, acquire, and doing things that are out of the norm, that is usually a sign that you want to pay attention to. Because again, what's going on for you? You anxious? You depressed? What's the story behind that? What's the attachment to that? And that's where we begin to dig in and really clear it all out to make sense.
I feel sometimes these emotions stem from maybe childhood, being deprived because you didn't have nice things. You had maybe 2 pairs of pants and a limited amount of clothing, and now you're like, you want more now. I think that could also be the case. I mean, I know I grew up that way, my parents got divorced, and my mother and my father were not, they didn't care if I had anything. So I started working at a young age at 13, just so I could provide for myself. But even then they took my money. But at the same time, that could be the reason why sometimes I have too much. But when I feel I have too much, I do go through my closet and I get rid of stuff. Not as much as I should, but I do. I do try to get rid of things that and I usually give it to family members, my nieces, especially because my brother's also on a limited income. So I know other people benefit, or give it to the Goodwill. It was funny because during COVID, you could not get Goodwill or any of those secondhand stores to take your donations. So it was really hard to get rid of stuff during COVID. But anyhow, it's important to also bless others with the overstock you have in your house, whether it's clothing, food, items, household items, whatever it is, consider doing that.
Well, I think you also make a really good point, which is another educational, I guess, understanding for people. I think, clutter comes in many forms and fashions, right? Clutter is just not about acquiring and, overbuying. Clutter can be because a person is just messy, right? And so it goes back to they didn't learn routines or habits. And so they really don't understand general housekeeping 101. And I have to tell you, you made a very good point, whether it stems from childhood or, a trauma. I've done classes on trauma clutter, the relationship to trauma and clutter. And, so clutter is very complicated. It's a very personal topic. It's a very intimate topic, right? Because it's your story. And although it sounds like it's very generic, like we use the word clutter, but it's your clutter. It's your story. It's your stuff. And so really getting in there and understanding what it's about is how you clear it up. Early on in my career, I'll never forget this. I was doing a show and I was showing everybody how you teach a child to make a bed and the importance of making a bed in the morning. And, giving the time and showing them and making fun at the same time, having a good time making the bed. So it becomes something that they want to do and they always associate it with laughter. Maybe it's a pillow fight, pulling up the sheets or whatever it is. And giving them that basic understanding of why it also is important, right? And making your bed, and this is what I say all the time, and because it's true, and a lot of people have their own spin on it. And you can take from, the military to, the CEOs to me, to whoever, right? If you can't make your bed in the morning, and I'm not talking about once in a blue moon, there's an emergency or you're sick or whatever. I'm talking about if you can't make your bed in the morning, how do you expect to follow through on other things during the day? Your bed, again, is a signal for you. Am I able to follow through? Am I able to give myself the time to do something? Because I'm going to tell you why it's so important. Number one is when you come home at night and you want to go to bed, do you really want to go to sleep in a bed that the sheets are all tangled? No. And you signal to your brain immediately, mess. You're at unrest. You're at dis-ease. So your brain is not going to shut down the way it would normally shut down if you looked at a made bed. Okay. The next part of it is the definition of organization. And this was at my party, and if everybody remembered, we did a little stunt with this. Whoever guessed it won. The definition, the Kissin philosophy of the definition of organization is the ability to follow through. And so when someone cannot overcome their clutter, it's because they're having a hard time following through. And they've never learned how to do that. And so we go back to the elementary stage of, do you make your bed every morning? And like most of the time, they're going to say no if they're honest. Okay. But it is, I'm telling you, one of the basic things you can start with is making your bed in the morning. It will do wonders for you. And that is what we call healthy living. That's your wellness and that's your well-being.
I do that. I make the bed at least by, 10 or 11 o'clock. It's done in the morning. It's not first thing because usually John's still in it. And but he even notices it when I don't make the bed. For some reason things have gotten busy and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and he'll come out and he'll look at me. He said, the bed's not made. And I'm like, seriously? Really? You're gonna ask me to make the bed? But well, I don't want him to make the bed because I don't want to have to teach him how to do it. I just do these things. I like to take care of some things like that. And so I like to make the bed a certain way. And he even says it's, when he gets in the bed at night, it feels good. The blankets the comforter is fluffy. His pillows aren't all squished and upside down all over the bed, wherever he left them when he got up. It feels like you're in a hotel.
When we have a made bed, again, going back to a routine, okay, it changes the neural pathways to the brain. So a lot of my job is educating my clients on these type of things, so they understand when they come and they want to change their life, they need to be educated on how it's going to benefit them. So just think of it this way: when we do mantras, right? The idea behind a mantra, right, is that you're going to change the neural pathway to the brain, meaning you're going to eliminate the negative self-talk, replace it with positive talk. And this is how we shift the brain. One of the things that I think is fabulous, I think Louise Hay created it, and everybody has their spin on it, but my clients know this and I know they love it when we talk about it. But let's just say, for example, you wake up in the morning, and for some people, they wake up, they're not always happy, right? They just feel crummy. So the quickest way to fix that is, if you are right dominated in your hand, when you go into the bathroom to brush your teeth, you switch hands and you do it lefty. If you're lefty, you do it righty. And again, what that does is it changes the neural pathway to the brain. It makes you think differently. It shifts the mindset. So what it does, actually, with all that said, is it creates you to be in the now. And it takes your mind off whatever it is, how you woke up with, I feel crummy, I'm depressed, I'm sad, or whatever. It immediately will shift it. And so part of all this organization discussion is, again, and this is why I named my company Keep It Simple Now, is because it's teaching people how to be in the present moment. Because when we are in the future, we get very anxious, right? And that's where some of this compulsion can come into play, and the clutter starts to build up because we're acquiring. So it's a trigger. And when we're in the past, we can get depressed. And this is where some of the messiness comes in, because we don't have the energy to clean up and put away. You see the difference, right?
Yes.
And so the now is really about, how do I stay here and start to reinforce the positivity. Now, listen, guys, let me be really clear about this, and my clients know this. This is not, for me, easy work either, right? I worked on this on myself for 20, 30, I don't even want to admit how many years. So this is a practice, right? So my philosophy in my business is really a practice. Continue practicing and practicing until it starts to become second nature. And then when you are hit down, when you are feeling bad, when you're on your knees, then it's not like you're immobilized, you're not paralyzed. You have a toolkit, like Gabrielle was talking earlier. You have a toolkit to go into and use that. These are strategies, right? These are solutions. These are policies. These are procedures to help you get out of whatever it is, so you don't go down that rabbit hole where you can't get out, right? Where you feel like you're suffocating, you're stuck. And that's the beauty of this. That's why I really feel so strongly, and why I've been in business for so long, is because I'm hooked on it. Because it just makes so much sense to me, right? And who doesn't want to feel good? Feeling good is cool, right? Feeling good is sexy. Feeling good is beautiful. When you're down and depressed and anxious and you're all unraveling, you're a hot mess. And you don't want to be like that. And so to me, it's like when I'm starting to like spiral out, it's like, okay, what do I need to do? I need to like talk to myself, use some of these tools. And that's what they're there for, they're tools.
What's one go-to tip for staying organized and decluttering everything that's going on in your life?
Go to patriciadiesel.com. I just, did my website, so that's really exciting. So you'll find a bunch of resources there. So I invite you to participate and subscribe and always, get some good tips. And one good tip, let me think, the daily reflection. And the reason why you want to do a daily reflection is because what it does is it acknowledges all the things that you've done good during the day and possibly anything that you feel you may have made a mistake on something, because we know there's no mistakes really. It's really about what could I have done better, right? What did I learn from that experience? And what that does is it kind of releases everything for you, and it ensures you that you get a better rest in the evening when you lay your simple little head down on the pillow.
This has been Feel Good, Share Good's Real Talk, where we keep it real to heal. And I thank everybody for joining us. Good night, everyone.